All right, continuing for colleges and higher education. Mostly before this era was mostly white males who went on to higher education, white, yeah, middle class and upper class. During this era, a lot of colleges were created just for women, and that was a huge step forward. Some of those colleges are still around today. Also, some colleges, but not very many. Harvard was one of these colleges that went co-ed, that allowed women and men to attend their college. And then some other but again, very, very few colleges actually allowed women to teach. Even most women's colleges, most of the professors were men. Um, Also, during this period, you see the rise of the traditionally African American colleges, which was a lot of times in the South, but there are some in the North as well. So, higher education was beginning to become more available to all Americans during this era. For entertainment, well, there was vaudeville. These were traveling variety shows where you would even have like striptease artists, but mostly it was usually family oriented with jokes and singing during the day, and then the cruder live variety shows would happen at night with sort of off-color jokes and some one-act plays and physical humor. Um, and these were, since there was no such thing as television or radio, these were traveling shows all around the country. The stranger one is called minstrel shows, and these were when white actors put on blackface and performed sort of with like what they considered to be African American accents and sang traditionally black songs. These were actually really popular in the United States well up into the 50s, and in England they even had a minstrel show on television until 1981. A very strange phenomena. Movies began in 1903. They were silent. They were very short in the very beginning, and they usually had an organist or musicians who accompanied the music and played along with the movie as it was played. No text. They'd show the text on the screen. This is a slide from or a frame from the very first movie called The Great Train Robbery, which we can watch in class if you want. It's only like 10 minutes long. Circuses traveled all over the place. Here's two lions and a liger laying in front of the lions. Circuses were all over the place. Big ones and little ones would come to your town, and there would usually be not a period of very long before there was a circus in town. If it wasn't a circus, you had amusement parks. This is a picture of Broad Ripple Park. During this era, Broad Ripple Park was an amusement park, and in the middle of the picture, you see the big wooden roof. That is actually the carousel that's at the Children's Museum underneath that roof, and it is now was moved from Broad Ripple down to the Children's Museum. You could get on, if you were your age, there was White City on the south side, there was a Broad Ripple Park up on the north side, and then on sort of real close to where the Art Museum is today, there was an amusement park called Riverside Amusement Park. So there were 3 amusement parks in Indianapolis during this era. And then there were sports like baseball and football with no helmets. And they wore these little leather things sometimes, no pads. There was bicycling, and that is Major Taylor, who was the most famous American bicyclist. And because he was black, he was barred from racing in the United States and became famous and made all his money racing in Europe. And basketball with your incredibly short shorts. Finally, entertainment to continue. You would get most of your information on a daily basis from newspapers. That was most people's main source of information. There was such a thing as yellow journalism. That is when you use sensational stories to sell newspapers, kind of like your National Enquirers. Magazines and books became very famous. Cosmopolitan magazine was around back then. Huckleberry Finn was the most popular book of this era. And finally, music happened. And the most impressive thing about music during this era was a completely new form of music, which is intrinsically American, pioneered by African Americans, and it is known as jazz, which still is around today. Without jazz, there'd be no music afterwards in American culture. No rock and roll, no rap, no punk rock. That is a picture of Cole Porter, one of the pioneers of American jazz. And that's the lecture.